Okay, here we are. Welcome everyone to the monthly Picket Action, US-Canada Hands-Off Venezuela, Free Alex Saab. I want to first acknowledge that my name is Allison Bodine. I am the coordinator of the Fire This Time Movement for Social Justice Venezuela Solidarity Campaign and author of Revolution and Counter-Revolution in Venezuela from Battle of Ideas Press. We are here today, and I am broadcasting from today from the unceded territories, the traditional and stolen territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish Coast Salish nations. And this recognition and our work in solidarity with the Indigenous peoples of Canada is an important part of every fight that we wage for social justice and a better world. So I want to recognize that. As we are here today, on October 16th, 2022, just yet 2 days ago, marks 1 year that Venezuelan diplomat Alex Saab has been held in jail in Miami unjustly, and nearly 2.5 years since he was first abducted at the command of the US government in Cape Verde. He was first detained on his way to Iran to negotiate contracts on behalf of the government of Venezuela meant to help alleviate the devastating impact of US, Canada, and other Western government sanctions on the government of Venezuela. His work enabled and would have continued to enable people in Venezuela to receive access to more fuel, medical supplies, and food. He was especially integral in a program I think we'll hear more about tonight, known as CLAP, which is Venezuela's system of distributing subsidized food and basic goods under the hardships of sanctions. So this month's picket, I'm really looking forward to. But like I said, it's the 20th monthly consecutive picket action. And we have some very important updates and analysis from lawyers, advocates, and activists from the US, Canada, and direct from Venezuela, who are fighting for Alex Saab's freedom and fighting in solidarity with the people of Venezuela, who every day face the difficulties and challenges imposed on them by a regime of brutal sanctions and blockade. Today's action is organized by the Venezuela Peace Committee in Winnipeg, the Fire This Time Movement for Social Justice Venezuela Solidarity Campaign, and Just Peace Advocates, with the support of Venezuela solidarity organizations and people in solidarity with Venezuela across Canada. Following our panel, we will have a time to take a group photo together. So if you have a sign or a t-shirt, feel free to bring one. If not, no worries, just raise your fist and join us as we chant and unite our voices against sanctions and for freedom of Alex Saab. Our panel today features INDHRIANA Parada from Venezuela, John Philpott, who is joining us from Montreal, CASSIA LAHAM, who is an anti-war organizer in South Florida, and Professor LUIS ACUña, who has once again joined us direct from Venezuela, although he is the charge d'affaires of the Venezuelan Embassy here in Canada. Thank you all for joining us today and for your time. Feel free, as many have already done, to post in the chat your support for Alex Saab and any other messages of solidarity and support that you would like to share with us tonight. And I will go ahead and introduce our first speaker. INDHRIANA Parada is a Venezuelan lawyer, an expert in human rights, and a member of the movement for the liberation of Alex Saab. We first met a few months ago when she spoke at a previous picket action, and we learned so much from her experience and research into the important legal issues around the case of Alex Saab. And we, of course, are inspired every day by the work of the movement to free Alex Saab in Venezuela, which is constantly mobilizing and educating and fighting in the streets. And it is an honor to have you here with us tonight. INDHRIANA Parada will be speaking in Spanish. So if you are listening to the English channel and you haven't clicked on the interpretation function, make sure to do that. But without further ado, INDHRIANA Parada. Ah, espera.
Wait.
Estás, tu micrófono. Yeah.
You are muted.
Gracias.
Now we're good. So let me repeat myself. Hello, good evening. I wanted to greet you and thank you for this constant mobilization on the part of Canada and its organizations. My greetings to the rest of the panelists and great thank you for helping us making visible this struggle we are conducting here in Venezuela for the freedom of our diplomat Alex Saab and the removal of all coercive, illegal, unjust sanctions that are asphyxiating the Venezuelan people and all countries that are subjected to these measures. Alison, first I would like to begin by telling you about what happened the most recently. Today, it was publicly shown a document, a motion that was presented by the defense of Alex Saab before the Florida court. This is a motion to drop this trial, which is based on the status of Alex Saab as a diplomat that was a representative of the Venezuelan government and his immunity. So this grounds are based on the fact that Alex Saab was sent as a special envoy on behalf of Venezuela in 2018, and he was conducting the third humanitarian action towards Iran when he was kidnapped. This is a very important public document that is approximately 74 pages long, divided into 4 chapters, but I do encourage you to read at least the introduction. If you read the introduction and the conclusion, you can clearly see how in only 2 pages, there is a perfect summary of how international law works. We must remember that right now in the United States, we're seeing a discussion on an immunity trial and to see if the United States will respect Alex Saab diplomatic immunity. In this introduction, it's explained what the conditions are established by the international law and its rules, like the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations and the Vienna Convention on the Right of Treaties, on the treaties law, and also the laws of the United States as regards diplomatic status. This tells us that in order for a person to be considered a diplomat, there must be 3 conditions met. First, the person must be credited by a state that grants them this accreditation. In this case, it's Venezuela. The second condition to be met is that this person must be accepted before the state where it is being granted this authorization. This person may be authorized before an international organization or a country. And the third criteria is that this person's means of work is embedded in diplomatic actions. So here in this document, we see how Alex Saab was complying with the whole criteria required by the United States law and these other laws. And we can prove this with all evidentiary documents that we presented alongside this motion. When we speak about law, not only do we need to prove our words with documents, but everything must be documented and proved. And this was done by an excellent team that has documented each of the facts that we present. We can see, Alison, you asked me about some documents, and these documents are precisely the ones that prove that Alex Saab was a special envoy since June the 9th, 2018. Also, he had successfully conducted 2 previous missions in 2020. He was in the midst of a 3rd diplomatic mission, but today we see this document being made public, where we see that there was a mission that set off on June the 12th, 2020. We see this preparatory document, which is 3 days before Alex Saab was kidnapped. And in fact, both the Venezuelan government and the Iranian government had prepared this diplomatic mission. That is, the other criteria that is required for a person to be considered a leading person in the mission and who was working on behalf of its state is this. We see in these documents that this mission had been prepared and the recepting country, Iran, was expecting this mission. When we see this, then it's very easy to understand that the diplomatic status of a person cannot be proved before a third-party state. The conditions, the criteria, and it's very important to understand this, these conditions for a person to be considered a diplomat is when both states, the recepting state and the other state, reach an agreement to have this mission conducted. Today, this has been proved with these documents. All legal conditions had been complied with. However, we see with much concern that this has not been news, but actually, unfortunately, through the use of media warfare and the use of even renowned journalists, what they want to spread out, it's just a detail. They make reference to a specific code in a diplomatic passport, and they compare this with an ordinary passport. We must explain to the whole audience that a passport, whether it is ordinary or diplomat, it's an identity document. It's an ID aimed at identifying a person. When we speak about a diplomat passport, we are speaking about a passport that identifies a person, but also gives them certain powers so that their trips are easier. So in this case, it's not relevant in order to prove if Alex Saab was a special envoy by Venezuela. And why is this? Because the only conditions required by the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Conditions is this three I just explained. So they wanted to use this detail, this comparison between these two passports to bring doubt to Alex Saab's diplomatic status. This is not only absurd, but actually very dangerous, because the passport is an identity document. We have set some examples all throughout this day. If you go out for a run, or there's an emergency and you leave your ID card at home, you don't stop being a citizen or a human being or a citizen of your country. The only thing that may happen that if you're arrested or detained and you have to be identified, you can be detained until you can get your ID. This is the only thing that could have happened. However, they wanted to base their arguments on this passport issue. But what we want to understand is that this motion to drop this indictment is based on this Vienna Convention and its article number 29, and the obligation of third states of respecting transit of diplomatic actions as contained in Article 40. If a person goes through a third-party state, this state is obliged to respect that mission and also allow for their passage. This has always been like this historically. A representative status has always been respected because the immunity of this person is not aimed at protecting a single person, but actually to protect the sovereignty of the state they represent. to protect the mission that any diplomat conducts. We see there are two very erroneous arguments and also very dangerous arguments by the United States to try to not acknowledge Alex Saab's diplomatic status. The United States attempts to not acknowledge this status by only saying that they do not recognize Venezuela's government. This is very erroneous, because if we start by analyzing this, we must remember that Alex Saab was appointed in 2018, that is when there was still diplomatic relationships between Venezuela and the United States. But not only that, the lack of recognition by a state to another state or another government only leads to a lack of diplomatic relationships between those two governments. But the government that is not recognizing the other one cannot prevent the other states from having diplomatic relationships with the rest of the states in the world. This is very dangerous, because the United States wants that all diplomatics around the world are credited before the State Department. This is absurd. It has never happened before. And also, as an international community, we must make a call, because we cannot have this as a precedent. This is endangering their own diplomats, the American diplomats. Today, any United States diplomat that is in a different state would be subjected to this fact. If there is any inconvenience between states, their diplomatic immunity may be lost because of this argument. So these are very weak arguments that only lead to see that there is a political persecution, but also that there is no legal grounds to have Alex Saab retained and in jail. And also I wanted to comment that I have been researching for over 2 years. I have been writing down this exact timeline and comparing this with the laws that have been infringed, international law as well. And also I should say that in some days we will have a book published by me, where we see a very detailed analysis of this case, and we will prove why we speak about political persecution. Not only is Alex Saab a diplomat that is kidnapped, but also we say that he is a war prisoner. And it's very important to have this brought to the table of discussion, because when we speak about war prisoners, we see there's an agreement here, which is the Geneva Convention that applies here. However, the world has been a witness of new wars, new types of wars. We're speaking about non-conventional wars, economic, political, diplomat wars, where armed conflict is masked, is not being used anymore, but in order in place of that, we see other strategies being used. Among them, the more than 800 unilateral coercive measures that have been imposed on Venezuela. We're speaking about a country that speaks about democracy but imposes dictatorship, because they prohibit businessmen all around the world to establish commercial trade relationships with whom they want. That is a true dictatorship, a true limitation to self-determination and sovereignty of each of these states and business persons. So when we speak about Alex Saab, we say it's a man that was appointed to combat a war strategy, because as you very well said in your summary, Alison, he was appointed so that he would get food, health, resources, and fuel, because Venezuela was facing an inhuman blockade, a blockade that was documented by the UN's Human Rights Rapporteurship and its members who investigate, who assess these issues. There was a report presented by the UN which concluded that the United States measures are illegal, they violate human rights, and they constitute a crime against humanity. It's a systematic attack against the population. Under Venezuelan legislation, even when there is an emergency, economic emergency, Alex Saab was appointed as a special envoy to combat this war strategy. So we make a call to the international community to review these international instruments, which leave completely unprotected these people that are new victims of non-conventional war. We are seeing now war prisoners that are political people who are being politically persecuted in the midst of a diplomatic and political war. The world has been a witness of this. They have clearly seen this. And of course, laws are not static, are dynamic, and they are modified according to the reality. So the new reality is that the United States is using this coercive measures strategy in order to attack governments and to achieve their goals, which is to overthrow governments. This is not something I say. It's something that was said by high officials in the United States. For example, Mark Expert, when he was the Secretary of Defense, one of the top defense authorities under Trump's administration, they said that they did have knowledge that Alex Saab was an envoy by President Nicolas Maduro to Iran. But not only do we have this confession, but actually we do have John Bolton's confession, who said that they participated in planning coup d'etats. Also, Elliot Abrams' confession, who was an envoy for Venezuelan and Iranian affairs by the United States. It's important to say that how do we get to today's document? I should say that some years ago, the Florida court ruled twice to the prosecutor they ordered them to present all documents, classified and non-classified documents. This is in line with Brady rules, which demand that all prosecutors and state departments to present documents that may favor the accused. So after many suspensions, because the prosecutors didn't present these documents, well, they presented some, but they were the basis upon which the defense filed this motion that we're speaking about. So this document that became public today is very important, because not only is it important for the exact timeline of the 3 diplomatic missions that were carried out by our diplomat Alex Saab, but also it's evidence of conversations between officials, high officials, for example, Mike Pompeo, who was the Secretary of State of the United States. He spoke to Elliot Abrams, telling him he was concerned about the appointment of Alex Saab when there was still diplomatic relationships between Venezuela and the United States, that is in 2018. So it's all proved, it's all on the table, and the only conclusion is that it has been proved once and again that Alex Saab is a Venezuelan diplomat that did not commit any crime. There are no criminal accusations. And until today, the case, the trial has not started, and there has not been any serious accusation. The elements upon which the prosecutors base their arguments are inspecific, are undetermined. They try to accuse Venezuela's government in power today. This is true meddling and a violation of the United Nations Charter. So we do believe, we are very satisfied, the lawyers that are in touch with this case, because we believe if there is at least some independence in the judiciary and of the United States, if there was a respect of their laws, this case could be solved legally, because there is no other way out than recognizing the diplomatic status of Alex Saab, to respect his immunity and to immediately free him. So thank you so much, Alison, for this opportunity. And I'll be here for any other questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, INDHRIANA. It is great to hear from you, to know that a book is coming out soon. We will do our best to share about the book, and hopefully it will also be available online. So please send us all the information that you have. It's great to hear such a comprehensive analysis of his case, but really I think the most important part that we have to remember as activists here in Canada or the United States is that the case of Alex Saab is political, and there's so much evidence of that. And you've laid it out so well about how there's no legal basis for Alex Saab to remain in prison, separated from his wife, his children, the people of Venezuela. And I appreciate all of your words and analysis here today. John Philpott is probably thinking, oh, she made my job easier. At least I hope that's what he's thinking. So we're gonna go next to John Philpott, who will also be speaking as a lawyer, someone very integral to the case of Alex Saab, who has helped us spread more information about the case to people in the US and Canada through his visits to try and go see Alex Saab in Cape Verde, to the many articles that he has authored or co-authored today. John Philpott is an international human rights lawyer, an expert in international criminal defense based in Montreal, Quebec, and is also on the board of directors for Just Peace Advocates. John was also part of writing an important report from the Sanctions Kill campaign based in the United States about the impact of US, Canada, and other countries' sanctions on Venezuela. As you said, INDHRIANA, over 800 measures imposed against the government of Venezuela, really constituting a blockade against the country. John, without further ado, welcome, and the floor is yours. Oh, sorry, you are on mute.
How's that? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Now, maybe your microphone turned down somehow. You're unmuted, but very quiet.
Can you hear me now?
It got a little bit better.
Just a sec. That. Hang on, I'll just change speakers. Sorry.
It just got much better. That sounds great.
Okay, fine. Well, first, welcome. Hello from Montreal. I'm pleased to be here with you, and I thank you for inviting me, and I thank you for going second. So I learned today about the motion to vacate, which we were waiting for. And I'm speaking from Montreal, which was taken by force by Britain in 1759, and we don't have power to correct the wrongs towards the First Nations in Quebec. But McGill University should return its lands to the people. That it's now worth $2 billion. But anyway, I'll go back to the issues before us. And I noted, and Alison just mentioned, and INDHRIANA talked about unilateral coercive measures, and the sanctions kill. I'm involved in sanctions kill, and we're bringing a revised report out in about a week based on the changes, because the role of sanctions in the world is changing. It does not change anything with respect to Mr. Saab, but it does. This whole question of unilateral coercive measures is central, and it's a form of war which we have to be aware of and fight against. I'm going to recall a couple of things about Alex Saab in legal terms, and his INDHRIANA has explained very clearly his status and his naming before the government, U.S. government, when they recognized the Maduro government originally. But in June 2020, he was arrested when he was in transit, and he was held and tortured until December. And the regional African court, it's not an appeal court, it's a court of first instance of the regional court, first got him out of solitary confinement, and then they ordered him to be released and be granted $200,000. And this is really important because the US and Cape Verde, which was under terrible pressure, did not respect this judgment. They even tried to have it reconsidered, and the regional court, which actually I know about it because I was in Niger last year, and I know the people from that court through my profession. The Human Rights Committee also said, don't transfer him until we resolve this issue. So he was kidnapped on the 16th. What I'm talking about is a paper about his legal case, which I'm going to present at the American Association of Jurists conference in Argentina. But in Africa, people supported Alex Saab and rejected Cape Verde's approach. The African Bar Association called for his release. He was kidnapped on the 16th of October last year, just a year and 2 days ago, and his case was not complete. His lawyers weren't informed, and it was one day before the election when the new government was apparently not going to was not going to extradite. And he was extradited on 8 charges. They dropped him about a week and a half later, and now they're only charged with conspiracy. And for those of you, I don't really understand it. I'm a lawyer. I don't understand conspiracy very well. It's the easiest charge to convict on, and it's the darling. It's the darling of the U.S. prosecutor. Now, my colleague here, INDHRIANA, mentioned the Brady application, and our paper goes through the arguments in the Brady application. What the real rule says: if you have evidence which is helpful to the defense, you got to give it to them. If it's under your control, that's the trick. Now, the U.S. government fought this. They said, we don't recognize the Maduro government. He's already been extradited from Cape Verde. You have to respect the Cape Verde courts. Now, what happened is Judge Scola rendered a judgment which was somewhat favorable to Alex Saab, and ordered the government. But here's the problem, of course. Ordered the government to give anything under their control about his services as Venezuelan envoy, whether any other country had recognized his status, his role in Iran's state activities, diversion of the plane, etc., etc. The question, and INDHRIANA mentioned it, under the control of the prosecutor. And Judge Scola's ruling is narrow. And the material says that was quite narrow about the definition of which departments in the US have to search for documents. What that comes down to an absurd situation. The US government, in many of its different parts of the country and departments, can have real information, and they don't have to give it up to Alex Saab's lawyers. And this is a political fight, of course. It's a political legal fight. And just last week, the government lawyers, Mr. Saab's lawyers, applied to reconsider the judgment because they had indications that the judge had ignored information which wasn't available at the time, didn't have all the information, and asked to broaden the scope of this ruling, Brady ruling. So the trial is on the 12th of December. It's a federal trial. I've been involved in I'm going to say something which isn't quite true, okay? In the US justice system, the federal prosecutor always wins. Now, that's not quite true, but it's a really big danger. And Allison mentioned the political nature of this case. So this is why my perception of this trial, I'm a litigator. I fight cases. We win some of them in very difficult circumstances. And we have reasons to believe, to hope that the truth will come out. And I would like a copy of that motion, which was filed today, to attach it to our paper. But there still is significant danger for Alex Saab, because this judge can have a very narrow approach and not have enough information. What does that mean for us? And this is why I was pleased to attend this meeting. The fight against sanctions has to be fought harder and harder. The fight for Alex Saab, the political campaign, has to be brought farther and farther. The arguments that INDHRIANA very clearly explained about the importance of international relations and immunity of diplomacy has to be fought farther and farther. There's been a lot of discussion about prisoner exchange. And some people say, oh, it's not worth it. I think it's one part of the campaign. It's not the campaign, because there's many other aspects to the campaign. There's the question of the US hunger for oil that might help the Venezuelan government. There's the strength of the Venezuelan government, which is probably the strongest aspect of the defense of Alex Saab. So my only warning is, let's not count on the US justice system, all right? And if we can find more information, and I'm sure the government of Venezuela is looking for it, more information about internal recognition in the US of this status, it can be a very useful way of winning this case, which will be argued on the 12th of December. And I expect the campaign of Alex Saab will have a large presence on the 12th of December. And so for these reasons, I'm very, very pleased to be here today. I'm very pleased to learn from INDHRIANA's about this new motion, because I was waiting for it, the motion to vacate, it's called, I think, in the legal terms. And I would like a copy of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John, for that update, and also for the work that you're doing on the legal front and within, I guess, maybe what we refer to as civil society, but in the legal sector. It's been very important to his case, which has an international impact, as you said. I mean, if the US rules not to recognize his diplomatic status, then this could be applied in many other situations in a very dangerous way. especially when it comes to countries that are actively fighting against US sanctions. And the United States imposes sanctions on, I believe it's nearly a third of the world or more. And so this is a very significant case for human rights and justice. And thanks for drawing so clearly the necessity to organize a campaign on the streets and within civil society, within our workplaces, and with our friends and our families, and really make sure that people know who Alex Saab is in the United States and Canada, especially leading up to December 12th. So there is, there's people on this call from many different provinces, some US states, so and working within the campaign to free Alex Saab in the United States as well. Let's build towards December 12th for sure. Thank you very much for your time today. Next, I have CASSIA LAHAM, who's joining us. I know she's very active in different struggles, but today speaking especially as an anti-war organizer in South Florida with the People's Opposition to War, Imperialism, and Racism, also known as POWIR, and she's also on the administrative committee of the United National Anti-War Coalition, which is a group of anti-war organizations across the United States, which has called for a week of action actually this week, which I think we can definitely get to announcing. But is also an organizer in South Florida, which is where Alex Saab is in prison and where there is definitely a lot of misinformation, lies, media manipulation about Venezuela and the case of Alex Saab. So looking forward to hearing about your organizing and experience, and thanks for joining today, CASSIA.
Thanks so much, Allison. And gosh, I mean, I have to say, like, thank you to the people who spoke before me again, because you luckily took me off the hook for a lot of the things I was going to talk about, which is good because you all know more than me. But what I can talk about, unfortunately, that I probably know best is about the lack of justice in the US justice system. As Allison said, I am based in Florida, which in many ways for us on this call is the belly of the beast when it comes to US aggression towards Venezuela, but Latin America as a whole. I mean, as we speak right now, so I live right outside of Miami, and about 45 minutes from here is the base for US Southern Command. And US Southern Command is the arm of the US military Department of Defense that organizes, strategizes, and conducts military operations throughout Latin America. And as we speak, the US Southern Command folks have agreed to send a ton of weapons in the guise of security, enhanced security for the people of Haiti. I put in quotes. And so, you know, we're right in the middle of it over here in Miami, and unfortunately, it's also the center of reaction. A lot of reactionary forces come from throughout Latin America to settle here. And so it's often quite difficult to organize, and we do get threats against our groups, our organizations, and people. Places where we've met have been attacked, and we've had to move. And so it's quite the experience to be organizing in solidarity with Venezuela and the people of Latin America from the Imperial seat in Miami. That being said, I did want to, again, just sort of continue on what, what Phil mentioned earlier, which was, the lack of justice in the US justice system. The truth is, like, the United States has often been held up as a beacon of hope and justice for the world. And if that beacon was ever even lit to begin with, which is questionable, it has certainly been dimmed and dimmed and dimmed as the decades have gone on. And the system is absolutely rigged. It's not just rigged against Alex Saab, it's rigged against anybody who seeks justice in this country. Those who stand for justice are often those denied it. you know, those who seek justice for Black Americans, those who seek justice for Palestine, those who seek justice for the environment, for Venezuela, for Colombia, and those who seek to uncover the nasty truths that the US war machine tries to cover up. All of those people become victims of the US injustice system. So, you know, we're starting from an imbalanced place, right? But with all of that, we have so many stories of success when it comes to, you know, gaining support and solidarity and creating strong campaigns for people who are being denied justice in US prisons. And I'm sure Alex Saab's case will be another example of such a victory. That being said, I can't really say much about, you know, sanctions in Saab's case that wasn't already said. And so I think what I'll add is just that this is, you know, as an anti-war organizer, as Allison said, I'm with the United National Anti-War Coalition. You know, this isn't just Alex Saab, you know, and it's not just sanctions, it's all of it together, right? And it's also not just Venezuela, it's all countries who dare to resist US imperialism. And so I'm going to see if I can share my screen. I mean, it's not a particularly impressive PowerPoint, but it's the one I've got. And as a teacher, I like to use them. Okay, so hopefully I'm sharing it with you right now, I think. Yeah, okay. Excellent. So, you know, this is something that I've used to discuss this issue with others. And the United States, you know, again, is going after Alex Saab as part of what the speakers before me said, as part of a greater strategy. And it's more important now than ever for the people of the United States to stand in solidarity with those who resist US imperialism, mainly because US imperialism is on the decline right now. Like, the United States is lashing out. It is lashing out. It is doing last-ditch efforts to try and gain whatever support it can throughout the world because it knows its status globally is diminishing. And so now more than ever, we sort of have the upper hand in demanding justice for those denied it internally and on the global stage. So what I wanted to just quickly go through is that, you know, as being part of a larger strategy, it not just being Alex Saab or sanctions, the United States has been going after Venezuela since it dared to resist US imperialism, you know, back in 1998 with Hugo Chavez winning the presidency. You know, we saw just a mere 4 years later, we saw the CIA, you know, trying to assist a coup, right, against the Chavez government, you know, but that coup lasted less than 48 hours and he was, you know, re-implemented as president. And, you know, under the Chavez presidency and under his leadership, Venezuela's poverty rates absolutely plummeted, right? Literacy rates have gone way, way up. Malnutrition and levels of hunger have gone down. There's been redistribution of land to those who need it and who will work on it. And those people on this call who have been to Venezuela can most likely attest to this for themselves, having seen the new communities that have sprung up to address, you know, homelessness, to address, you know, the food programs that they have. All of this was put into place. This is the people of Venezuela having control over their own destiny, and the United States hates that. They especially hate that that the people of Venezuela have control over their own resources. And so, you know, by 2013, Chavez dies, Nicolas Maduro is elected president. And again, we're starting to see the same tactics used against Maduro as we did against Chavez. But despite all these attempts, homelessness continues to decline. The food programs continue to flourish. And you started to see a bunch of laws on the books to try and ensure housing and utility equity. That being said, I'll just go through it quick. I'm not going to go through all of this. But if you look at this timeline, you know, Alex Saab is one piece of a very bloody puzzle. And they're using him as a pawn. The United States likes to use whatever resources they can to get what they want across the world. you know, 2017, when, you know, Trump officials met with a bunch of reactionaries in Venezuela to help plan a coup, you know, they began sort of trying to gain support by around an absolute loser named Juan Guaido, who nobody ever acknowledged as the leader of anything except like my right foot. And so, you know, Juan Guaido is going to be declared president by the United States, and they're going to try to, you know, garner all sorts of support for him in the United States and other places. But the world and the people of Venezuela don't buy it. And so they're going to then try to utilize violent means to get rid of Maduro, because there was absolutely no popular support for Guaido. And those attempts include bombings. In 2008, we had a grenade attack and bombings of the Supreme Court. And, you know, this was conducted by a CIA affiliated pilot, who you can see at the bottom there, Oscar Perez. We got drone attacks against Maduro at a military parade in 2018. You know, and then by 2020, the United States, I mean, talk about charges against people, right? It's not just Alex Saab, but the US actually lodges these absurd charges against Maduro himself, against the president of Venezuela, and offering ransom money. You know, the US truly has no shame. And it sort of all levels up in 2020 when there's a attempted coup, which I think we all were very aware of, when this sort of made up mercenary organization based in Florida, by the way, and the arms supplies also came from Florida. So this made up group Silver Corps, which is literally just an army for hire. If you want them to do whatever you want, they'll do it. They decided to do this haphazard attempt at a coup against Nicolas Maduro and the government of Venezuela, and it turned out to be a total botched effort. But all that being said, you know, and here's some of the clowns behind a lot of these coups. On one side of the screen, you can see Marco Rubio, or how we like to call him, Narco Rubio. You've got Juan Guaido. I can't get his name right. Juan Guaido on the top there. And that guy at the bottom was, you know, the pathetic leader of that Silver Corps organization, former Green Beret, who ends up getting arrested along the Colombian-Venezuela border. So folks like these are trying as hard as they can to take down the Venezuelan government, which was popularly elected multiple times by the people of Venezuela, and they're doing it by drone attacks, they're doing it by coup attempts, they're doing it by trying to recognize people as the legitimate government of a country where they have no legitimacy at all. So this is a multi-pronged attack against the people and institutions of Venezuela. And then, of course, we have the sanctions, as folks before me mentioned, and I won't spend long on it because, you know, we've already sort of spoken about this, but sanctions, of course, the multilateral sanctions that have been placed upon Venezuela and other countries who, again, sort of dare to resist US imperialism, are just another aspect of this attack against Venezuela and its government. So I'll actually go ahead and skip around the kidnapping of Alex Saab, because the folks before me said beautifully much more than I could. I'll just say that, you know, by 2020, right, all of these pieces that I've spoken about earlier, right, the coup attempts since 1998, since 2002, and all of these other actions with sanctions and military, attempted military invasions, all these things sort of culminate into a last-ditch effort, and that's the kidnapping of Alex Saab. At least that's how I see it. And so I'll leave that there. I think folks already spoke about all of that. I'll add that the United States is not only spitting in the face of Venezuela by kidnapping Alex Saab, who's a recognized diplomat, they're also spitting in the face of, you know, multiple African nations who have on multiple occasions ruled that Alex Saab needs to be released, like an immediate and unconditional release needs to happen right now, right? That the extradition from Cabo Verde was not legal, and that his detention now is not legal. And so the United States is not only ignoring the people and institutions of Venezuela, but also, you know, the millions of people represented by ECOWAS in Africa. So, you know, this is a multinational slap in the face to millions of people, not just to international law. And so, you know, my point here is different strategies, same end goal, whether it's, you know, sanctions, coups, drones, kidnappings, all of this is for the United States to gain access to Venezuela's very precious resources, those being oil, mainly natural gas, and certain precious minerals that the United States would like to mine for and privatize. I'll add that, you know, Alex Saab is not the only person being held right now by the United States, not the only kidnapped person from Latin America. You know, we also have another high-profile kidnapping of a Colombian political prisoner, Simón Trinidad or Ricardo Palmera, who has been in a supermax prison in Colorado since 2008. And, you know, this again was a way for the United States to try and levy its power over Colombia and to dissuade people from going forward with any sort of peace process in Colombia. And right now he stands, you know, still in supermax prison in Colorado. And, you know, he's one of dozens, right? I mean, we could go through all the political prisoners that are either currently being held in the United States at the whims of the United States, or are out of the country because if they leave, they will be put into prison. Whistleblowers, political activists, peace activists, Black liberation activists, Native American liberation activists, all of these folks who have dared to speak up continue to be targets of US imperialism and the US injustice system. So that's sort of where I'll end it today. I won't take up any more of your time. I don't know if I can move this. I don't know if it's just on my screen or not. There we go. So I can put that in front of my face. But if you see on the right of your screen, you'll notice we've had a bunch of different actions in Miami for Alex Saab. And the best way to resist US imperialism is through solidarity. And that's just the truth. And all of us meeting here, I am so honored. I'm so grateful to have been invited on this call. The work you guys do is absolutely inspiring. All the people on this call right now are heroes to me. You're all seekers of justice, and I couldn't ask to spend my Tuesday night with better people than this. So let's move forward. Let's continue the actions. We'll be in Miami on December 12th, and we'll be happy to house and, you know, play host to anybody willing to come and rally for Alex Saab. Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab. Thank you, CASSIA, for really tying everything together, to talking more about the criminal US sanctions. Just to mention as well, for all of us participating from Canada, the government of Canada is complicit in these sanctions and continuing attacks against Venezuela, one of the few countries around the world that continues to recognize the so-called interim president, puppet Juan Guaido. And so building our cross-border anti-war, anti-sanctions, and blockade work is very important. And so it's great to have you here in that capacity and for the organizing in South Florida, which I know we all know is under very difficult situation and conditions. So that's a great idea to mobilize from Miami. Let's talk about it. And either way, again, December 12th, an important date in the case of the campaign for Alex Saab, and significant, as we've said, for its impact on international law and kind of, you know, challenging this idea that once again, the US thinks that they are the police of the world, that they make the laws and make the rules, and the people of the world are standing up and saying no, including the people of Venezuela who fight against sanctions attacks every single day. And so let's continue to build our movement in solidarity with Venezuela for self-determination for Venezuela, and an end to wars, attacks, and sanctions on the people of Venezuela in all of their forms. So thank you again, CASSIA, for joining. So there's one question that I'm going to ask Indhriana if she'd like to reply, and then we're going to go ahead and invite Professor LUIS ACUÑA, who is here with us joining from Venezuela, and then we'll take our group photo for tonight. The question in the chat comes from Evelyn, who's regularly joining our monthly pickets, lives in Alberta and is a solidarity activist as well. So thank you, Evelyn. Good to see you here. The question is regarding the possibility of a prisoner swap for Alex Saab and the case of someone named Fat Leonard, who was recently arrested in Venezuela. So Indhriana, if you'd like to address just some of that, that would be really excellent. The floor is yours.
Sí, muchas gracias, Alison.
Thank you so much, Alison. Well, yes, this prisoner swap figure, as we have said repeatedly, it's a very old configuration that was used ever since the First World War, that has been implemented by states, and it's even covered by the Geneva Convention in articles between 68 and 74, approximately, and covers prisoner swap. But when we speak about the possibility of this exchange for Alex Saab, we have said as movement that there's always been the conditions for this. There's always the possibility to do this through a negotiation, an agreement from both governments, of course. It's the leaders of both governments who would be able, through these negotiations, to take this decision, to make this decision. When we have spoken about the legal victory on the case of Alex Saab, we have been very focused, as panelists said before. We have won in international courts. We have won every case. We won this before the CEDAW court in 3 opportunities, and they ordered the freedom of Alex Saab because they considered it arbitrary. Also, the African Court on Human Rights of the Peoples also ordered this freedom. They also demanded to stop the extradition. The Committee on Human Rights of the United Nations for rapporteurships, special rapporteurships, demanded this. So all international bodies that have heard the case have ruled in favor of Alex Saab. And also this exchange for Fat Leonard, of course, this should be a conversation between governments, or any other negotiation or agreement. Well, we must remember that the United States has tried to seek an approachment between Venezuela and the United States in this economic crisis. And even in this aggression against Russia, they have seen this as a boomerang action. They are trying to get close to Venezuela. We don't know, because we are not spokesperson for the government, if this could be carried out under this specific case. But we have stated that the conditions for a swap are always there. We want the freedom of diplomat Alex Saab. We want justice to be made, and we consider that legally it has been sufficiently proven, undoubtedly, that Alex Saab is a kidnapped diplomat. And also I say that he is a war prisoner that is not protected by the Geneva Convention, because he's not a combatant of an armed conflict, but actually he is a struggler of a non-conventional war. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Indhriana, for that response to the question. And again, I think especially as people in the US and Canada who believe in justice, social justice fighters, anti-war activists, Latin American solidarity activists, we really have the responsibility to build that movement for freedom for Alex Saab, as you said, to help create those political conditions where the United States is really being put on the hot seat for violating international law, for their continued cruelty against the people of Venezuela. And it is our responsibility to organize a stronger movement in defense of Alex Saab. And that is why the Fire This Time movement for social justice, the Venezuela Peace Committee in Winnipeg, Just Peace Advocates, and others have come together to organize these monthly actions to continue to build momentum and support for an end to sanctions and for freedom of Alex Saab on a monthly basis. So thank you very much. So our final speaker we want to hear from today will go next, and then we'll have a few greetings from people across Canada, and then our group photo where we'll invite people to turn on their cameras and participate in chanting together and uniting our voices for freedom of Alex Saab and take a photo together. But I do want to invite up Professor LUIS ACUÑA, who is the Charge d'Affaires for the Venezuelan Embassy here in Canada, but he is not speaking from Canada due to the breakdown in relations between the government of Canada and the democratically elected government of Venezuela of President Nicolas Maduro. On Canada's part, Canada's hostility towards the government has meant that Luis is unable to do his functions from here within the country. So he is in Venezuela, and really we are honored that every month you give us your time for your perspective about what's happening in Venezuela today and the importance of building solidarity and links between poor, working, and oppressed people in Canada and the United States and people of Venezuela. So it's really a pleasure to have you here again tonight. And Luis, please, if there was anything you'd like to say.
Yes, hello, Alison. I want to thank INDHRIANA Parada, John Picket, and CASSIA LAHAM for this intervention tonight in the webinar. And of course, I want to thank you, Alison, the 20th in a row of the webinar in behalf of the Venezuelan people, in behalf of the freedom of Alex Saab, and and against the sanctions, against the unilateral measures that are, hurting very, very hard to the Venezuelan people. There is not much I can say about the Alex Saab. I think that the words of INDHRIANA are very, very clear as the reasons we have to defend Alex Saab, and for sure we have the right. I think the truth is on our side. And here I want to take the words of CASSIA that for the US, it does not matter if we have the right or not. They really do what they want to do. They don't care about justice. If they want to overthrow a government, they overthrow that government. If they even want to, they kidnap people, but even if they want to kill people, they kill people. We have to keep fighting with the help of all that team in which works. We are sure that Alex Saab will be free. We are sure of that. We have the right, and time will come in which Alex Saab will be free. And it's not a matter of exchanging Alex Saab for someone else. It's just a matter that we have the right, that we have the truth on our side, and that we will keep fighting. We will thank if someone wants to exchange Alex Saab, and we can have him right now. But we will keep writing with the law, fighting with the law on our side. And it's too bad that the justice in the US doesn't work. What can we do? I mean, what can we do? As CASSIA said, there are many people kidnapped at this moment in the US. We are fighting for Alex Saab. He was a hero for us. He did what nobody else did, that was to look for the food, for the medicines that the people in Venezuela needed. The unilateral measures keep hurting very hard to Venezuelan people. At this moment, when we are having floodings, rivers that go out of control, we need the resources that we don't have because the unilateral sanctions. So we will keep fighting against those unilateral measures, and we hope that things go better for our country and for our people. And here, Alison, I want to thank all the sponsors of these webinars, mainly to Fire This Time, because you are our voice abroad. And because hearing this, joining this webinar, people are able to know what's going on in Venezuela. They are able to know the truth about things, like the truth about Alex Saab, that INDHRIANA set to die, the truth about the justice in the US, as CASSIA said, and the truth about what's going on in our country with all those measures. So in behalf of the people of Venezuela, we want to thank you. We really need programs and webinars like this all around the world. And I think this is the only webinar that keeps going on every month since 20 months ago. And we hope that we will free Alex Saab, but that won't stop these webinars, because things in Venezuela need the solidarity of people from the US, from Canada, and from every place. I thank CASSIA for mentioning the situation in Haiti. It's too bad that she couldn't go further on what I expect will be a new invasion of Haiti by the US and by Canada. And that's a very important thing that we should talk about. And it's too bad. The people from Haiti has suffered so much that they deserve our words. It's like the Cubans. They have suffered so much that they deserve our solidarity too. So again, thanks very much, Alison. From Venezuela, the people of this country, thank you. Thank Fire This Time, and thanks all the sponsors, and of course, tonight they thank CASSIA, LAHAM, INDHRIANA Parada, and John Picket. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Professor LUIS ACUÑA. Professor LUIS, like I said, graciously joins the Pickets every month. And also, I didn't mention earlier, but to say Luis is also a former governor of the state of Sucre, and very, it is just a big honor for us to have you here as such a strong fighter for the Bolivarian revolutionary process and in defense of Venezuela, and to learn from you each month. And I think it's especially critical that we also recognize that the U.S. government is attacking, the government of Venezuela which has fought in solidarity with people, you know, of Haiti, which has given the people of Haiti support and solidarity, much like the people of Cuba when they've gone through difficult times as well. So thank you again. We're going to have a few greetings from people across Canada, including some anti-war organizers that I think can update us as well about some important actions happening against Canada and the US's re-invasion of Haiti. So we will talk about that in 1 second, but thank you again for always being with us, and all of our solidarity to you, Professor LUIS ACUñA. So we're going to go ahead and invite up a few people who have joined us in order to give greetings. And then we'll invite everyone to turn on their cameras and join the group photo to unite our voices against US-Canada sanctions on Venezuela and to demand freedom for Alex Saab. Let's see if people are able to accept the invitations I just sent. I think so. Okay. Give me 1 second here. And then we'll get everyone to turn on their cameras. Mary Carmen and Janine, I've sent you both invitations to speak today. I also did receive some messages from folks that were not able to join today, but sent their solidarity and greetings from different groups across Canada. But here we are. So Mary Carmen, if you're able to give greetings or say a few words from Alba Movimientos in Ottawa, that would be excellent.
Thank you, Alexon, for that wonderful webinar and Zoom of Picket that you do every month. It's so nice to see Professor Acuña and hear about Venezuela. I'm sorry what's going on in Venezuela with the rain. They say heavy raining over there and many people have suffered. But we are here always supporting. We are here always trying to do something for Venezuela, for our people. And thank you everybody who spoke. Everybody were wonderful speaks. Thank you everybody. Good night.
Gracias, Mary Carmen. Thank you very much again from Ottawa, Canada. And then we have Janine Solanki, who's joining us from Mobilization Against War and Occupation, anti-war organization here in Vancouver, Canada.
Hello, everyone. Good evening for whatever time zone you're in. It's great to see so many people joining from a lot of different places. And I want to thank the previous speakers and the organizers for bringing us together for this important action today, defending Venezuela and coming together demanding freedom for Alex Saab. We here on this call, I think, know very well that the forces of the United States of imperialism are the worst terrorists plaguing our world, bringing destruction to so many countries in the last 20 years in what we call the new era of war and occupation, which has encompassed Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, many other countries, not to mention covert attacks and sanctions on Iran, on Cuba, and of course, Venezuela. And as some of the previous speakers brought up, today we're seeing their next dangerous moves against the people of Haiti, who've been protesting and demanding access to food and fuel and basic necessities, and protesting against the country's imperialist-backed government. In the midst of this, just in the last short while, we've seen that Canada and the US have sent warplanes to Haiti, and that imperialists are planning to occupy Haiti under the auspices of the United Nations. This is something we have seen before, and we know what that looks like. We saw the 2004 coup d'etat and occupation of Haiti, and the last 18 years of on and off again occupation by the US, Canada, France, and the United Nations. And we see that the effects of that have brought death and injustice, hunger and poverty to Haiti. And despite that, the Haitian people are bravely fighting back, or bravely demanding their self-determination and resisting. The US government and their allies are attacking Venezuela. They're doing sanctions and blockades and kidnappings and armings and funding, supporting counter-revolutionaries, because Venezuela stands for the opposite of imperialism. Venezuela stands for the opposite of what the US is doing throughout the Middle East, throughout Latin America, Africa, and what they're doing today in Haiti. Venezuela stands for peace, for justice, for dignity, for a better world. And that's why we're here today, and why we're here every month demanding self-determination for Venezuela, why we support the Bolivarian Revolution, and why we would demand freedom for Alex Saab. One of the previous speakers was, saying how good it is to be on this call today with so many like-minded people. And I think we remember our strength and how important it is to come together. And in the anti-war movement, we are doing that consistently, but especially this week. Mobilization against war and occupation and other anti-war groups across Canada, the US, and around the world are taking part in days of action, which we're right in the midst of from October 15th to 23rd, demanding an end to imperialist wars, occupations, sanctions, and military interventions. This call to action was initiated in the United States by the United National Anti-War Coalition and has been taken up by the Canada-wide Peace and Justice Network, which is a coalition of 45 peace groups across Canada, which Mao is a part of. And so we're coming out to the streets, we're demanding an end to imperialist wars from Yemen to Haiti to Venezuela. And so if you're in the Vancouver area, I'm going to put some information in the chat in a moment, but if you're in the Vancouver area like I am, we're going to be protesting this Saturday, October 22nd at 2 p.m. at the Hyack Square, which is in New Westminster at New West Quay. So I'll put the information in the chat, and the number of different groups in the Vancouver area will be organizing that. And then I'll also put information in the chat where you can go to links to find out about other actions across Canada and the US. So hopefully there's something that you can take part in also. Thank you very much, everyone. And it's great to be on here with you all today.
Great. Thank you to Janine Solanki and to Mary Carmen Guevara for those greetings. We're going to start sending everyone invitations to become a panelist. So pop-up will come on your screen and will say you are invited to join as a panelist. You say yes, and you'll be able to turn on your camera and participate with us in the group photo. It'd be really excellent. If you have a sign or a t-shirt, that's great. But if not, you put up your fist or just chant together with us. So you'll get those invitations. As we start that, I have two announcements I'd also like to make while Janine gets information about those important anti-war actions in the chat. The next monthly US-Canada Hands Off Venezuela Free Alex Saab online picket action will be Thursday, November 24th, again at 4 p.m. Vancouver or Pacific time and 7 p.m. Toronto, Caracas time. Oh, actually, it is 8 p.m. Caracas time. We're going to go through a time change shortly, so let me update that. Okay, then the registration will also be in the chat for that. And then we have everyone is encouraged to join us at an important online event happening tomorrow, also about the case of Alex Saab. There's going to be a film screening and discussion Alex Saab, a kidnapped diplomat, a special episode of Code Pink, anti-war organization in the United States, what WTF is going on in Latin America, and the Caribbean program. So that's going to feature Carlos Ron, who is the Vice Minister for North American Affairs at Venezuela's Foreign Ministry, and the wife of Alex Saab, Camilla Saab, who we had featured at the Picket last month. So we're going to be showing the important film about Alex Saab and having a discussion. The links to join that are in the chat. Again, that's Wednesday, October 19th at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time or Vancouver time and 7:30 Eastern time. So the information will be in the chat shortly. Yeah, and everyone should be getting your invitations. So Janine, I'm gonna do these posts in the chat and then the chat's all yours for your, oh, you beat me. Okay, so the chats are now there. The information is in the chat about anti-war organizations, and it will be just shortly for the next online picket, again, Thursday, November 24th. The registration link is in the chat. And then the event and film showing for Alex Saab being organized by Code Pink tomorrow is now also in the chat. So let's begin to unite our voices. Everyone, if you haven't received an invitation yet and you want to turn on your camera or join us in the chanting, go ahead and raise your hand or say something in the chat and we will send you another invitation. Remember, you will get an invitation that says, do you want to be a panelist? And you need to say yes in order to participate in our group photo. Do one more round of invitations and then we will take our photo. So don't worry about smiles quite yet. We're just gonna do a few more invites and then I'll let everyone know it's time to smile so our cheeks don't get too tired. And we'll turn off our interpretation as well so we can all chant together and say thank you and good night and until next time. Okay. So I think everyone that's able to join us in the photo has turned on their camera. I need my sign as well. Of course, thank you for your assistance. Figure out how this works. Okay, here we are. So we can all chant together. Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free
Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab. Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Everybody.
Free Alex Saab.
Alex Saab.
Thank you.
Free
Alex Saab. Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Have a good night.
Alex. Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Yeah.
Looking great. Adios.
Adiós.
Gracias.
We will
Hasta luego. Hasta la próxima.
Hasta la próxima. Till
Sí,
next
hasta
time.
la próxima.
Thank you guys. Have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you.